Hi, this is Raj Christian, and this is my podcast known as The Barbarians. And you can find me on Substack, Spotify, YouTube, and please subscribe and follow my work. This week in Iran, 14 million people watched as the body of one man, seen by some as a despot, rolled through the streets of Iran. He was killed by his country's enemies at the start of Operation Epic Fury, the war in Iran, along with members of his family. He was the spiritual leader there, and his name was Ayatollah Khamenei. Khamenei was seen by some as a despot. He was also known to many as the religious spokesman and savior of the people of Iran. As his body he and his family passed through the streets, it's estimated that 14 million people watched as it moved slowly from one end and one city to the other until it met its final resting place. He was called the sign of God by his people. And people filled the streets every day of every moment that his body was in movement. His body passed from the cities like a storm moving from east to west. And that was intended by the Iranian people. There were tears and shouts of anger for his killers to die. Mothers and fathers brought their children to see and hear the things that they saw that day. For some, he was known as a ruthless leader and a supporter in the West of Islamic terrorism throughout the Middle East. And he was considered the real axis of danger in that part of the world when it came to terrorism. But in the eyes of his people, he was connected to God. He was also seen as a direct authority who controlled all the actions that went on within his country. He died on the day that Epic Fury began. On the very day that his funeral procession began, President Donald Trump was in Ankara, Turkey, meeting with NATO. And while there, he lashed out at NATO for its actions of not giving enough, in his opinion. And he brought up all the old wounds that existed. He went to Spain and passed them down and slapped at them because they wouldn't let him use their bases. He made the old cry about wanting to take Greenland and annex it and make it part of the United States. But even with all of that, didn't account for what was happening in the Middle East that day. There was nothing but anger and hatred for the United States. There was nothing but disdain for what had been done in Gaza and in Lebanon. But as his body passed through the streets, there was a feeling amongst the Iranian people that had never been seen before. There was a sense of unity. And despite all of what had happened and all the calls for regime change that both President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel claimed would happen, there was no signs of that anywhere. The Iranian people who had negotiated what was known as the MOU now supported Iran's battle with the U.S. And it appears at this moment that conflict is imminent between the United States, Iran, and Israel again, as it was at the end of Operation Epic Fury. There's already been combat access, firings, missiles exploding, and destruction of key ports on both sides. In southern Lebanon, this has never stopped, and the Trump administration was incapable of slowing down the actions taken by Prime Minister Netanyahu, both in Gaza and also in southern Lebanon, against what he said was Hezbollah. Ceasefires there never worked. Even when Trump tried to intervene and tried to slow down this combat that was there, he failed. The Israelis turned him to a deaf ear. President Trump made a conscious decision that there was no need to continue with the MOU. And so thusly, the United States now is faced of returning to more combat in the future. But one thing has changed. One factor has emerged through all of this. That there's a growing sense in the Middle East that the United States and Israel are simply warlords and attacking them. And there's a frustration amongst the people. And there's also a sense that a possibility that they need to unite to push back against the United States. They as a people have seen that they've lost their homelands. They've watched their brothers and sisters be killed. Children have seen horrors that they never saw before in the Middle East. So we have to ask a very hard question, especially regarding the MOU. Why is it that we have not gotten a clear picture of why we are fighting this war? Why is it that we've never been allowed to formulate a war power site to determine a cause and effect at a time and what's needed to stop this war? In this war, we've lost 13 Americans. Trump has been unable to affect the situation with any leverage, to the point that at one point he was prepared to begin war crimes by destroying infrastructure. We thought that the MOU ceasefire would find some way of clarity to slow this down, but it hasn't worked. And at home, his poll numbers continue to spiral out of control, falling further and further and further. He turned on NATO and its members, who offered no support during Operation Epic Fury. At first, he claimed he didn't want it. Then he demanded it. And at the NATO summit, NATO is looking for ways that if the need comes about, they'll create a new path without Donald Trump. The Danish government stepped up and said that he'll never be able to have Greenland. But why? Why do we continue to roll back under his leadership, asking for the same problems and trying to resolve them in the same manner? Why is it that our Congress and the Senate haven't stepped forward and demanded that change is necessary? That somehow this administration is going to need to find a way to work within NATO and also to continue the MOU. The COMS is still an enigma. The Iranians claim that you must follow their process or not be allowed access. And if you attempt to, the Iranians will fire on you and attack you. The Trump administration has used this as a means to step out of the MOU. But there may be only one choice left, and that's the real danger. The real danger may be that the only way at this point is to put boots on the ground, something everyone has been afraid of, but something that everyone may have to face, may be the only reality where there'll be a complete resolution, where combat will completely stop. But the price that'll have to be paid will be a monumental price. And the real question is, why have we allowed this madness of one man, Donald Trump, who in the eyes of many wishes to be king? We've seen this storm headed in our direction for a long time now. Why is it we can't control the actions of Israel as they continue to bomb relentlessly in Gaza, despite ceasefires, and in Lebanon, despite ceasefires? Why do we have to watch the human toll and the numbers of lives that have been lost? We have an ally, but an ally we can't control. So are they really an ally of ours? But most important is that for President Trump, he feels he has no guardrails to control him. In that fury, he had none, and he's committed himself to taking whatever action he feels necessary. Neither the Senate nor the Congress seems capable of forcing any kind of change or controls. But there has been pushback by people like me and you, people who are looking at the cost of this war, a cost that's seen over $34 billion spent in just a short span of time, a cost of munitions, and we know about the 13 people we've lost and the over 300 who have been injured as a byproduct of this war. We know that we have an ally who will not listen no matter what we try, and the administration is not willing to push back on them. But Trump has no way to get regime change because the death of Ayatollah Khamenei has just simply galvanized the Iranian people. They have a determination, not like was seen in 1979, when it yelled death to America, but control of the region. Their Middle East partners in UAE, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, all know that they pay the price whenever Israel or the United States attacks the Iranians. Trump knows that he faces a regional war, and the war is getting further and further from him. He knows that a regional war could solidly mean that Americans will have to stand and fight in Iran. And for that, he has no solution. He has no way to control that. He also knows that politically, it could be the end for him and for the Republican Party and for MAGA. When Americans see their own people coming back dead from a war with no regime and no rules and no concept of a battle. But we have to continue. We don't want to see this, to ask the hard questions. Why? Why is this being done? And why are we allowing it? We have to hold our administrators, both in the Senate and in the Congress, Republicans and Democrats, and demand more. We have to ask them the why questions. Why has this gone on over and over again? We have to hold this administrator accountable at every angle. And also the cost, the economic cost to a country that is now flailing economically. The average American is facing severe financial shortages. But again, It's up to you and I, not up to them. And even with this authoritarian government that exists, there can be why questions to force them to tell us and force our legislators. And in the voting booth, if they don't supply it, then we need to force them out until we get the right answers. This is the hot one across Iran, and this is Raj Christian. And you can find my work on Substack, Spotify, and on YouTube. And please subscribe and read my work. Let's stick together for the defense of our nation. I'll be seeing you down the road, and thanks.